So there's a very specific moment in week 1 of Perfect Match Season 2 that had me questioning whether Ancestry DNA has some reality stars in my family's bloodline.
I'm a little bit Italian.
Cool.
Yeah. Last name's Italian.
What is it?
Perfetto.
Sounds like a cheese.
What's going on, you guys? James here with another real recap and review of Perfect Match Season 2 on Netflix. That's right, we're back with another season of Perfect Match, because if one season wasn't enough to show you how toxic a bunch of people in a house in Mexico could be, this is the one. Guys, first I want to say thank you to Netflix for giving me the chance to watch these early for review. Now, by the time you're watching this, it's the day of release, and we got a schedule to talk about. So as you know, today is week 1, which is episodes 1 through 6. Week 2 begins June 14th, and that's episodes 7 through 9. And then we round it out with Friday, June 21st, which is episode 10, the finale. Now, I'm not going to lie to you guys, I'm actually not gonna tell you I hated week 1, because I didn't. It's a little entertaining and it's really trashy. But if you don't know much about Perfect Match, here's a brief summary. Perfect Match is all about bringing in singles from different Netflix reality television shows into one house and have them pair up to find their perfect match. But there's a twist. Winners of these compatibility challenges get to go into what is called the Boardroom and bring in new matches to break up other couples or matches for themselves. By the end of the journey, there will be one perfect match, and they win an all-inclusive resort vacation to wherever Nick Lachey says they get to go to. Now, like we always do with my Love is Blind recap and reviews, we're going to begin with my spoiler-free thoughts and then get into the spoiler recap. So time codes are below, you guys, if you want to skip ahead or skip around. So let's get into my spoiler-free thoughts, you guys. So like I said, I did not even hate week 1. The season is definitely leaning heavily into the toxicity of Netflix's reality television shows, and yeah, it's too dramatic. There's a lot of anxiety floating around and a lot of drama. Even though the drama isn't at the Love is Blind levels, it's still very entertaining. The budget does look like it was upped as well for this season, and I'm gonna be honest, the house looks much nicer as well than it did in season 1. They probably picked a different location, but there's just more in terms of graphics, in terms of sound design. And yeah, there are some really funny editing decisions here too. I even really thought the puns for the names of the contestants are really clever. So again, you can tell that the writers and the editors had a lot of fun, and I wish that fun kind of trickled into the music. Like, why are we not picking better song choices? Like, why are we not having better songs in general on these Netflix reality TV shows? I just was not a big fan of the music this week during Perfect Match Season 2. There's even a song that has a lyric, and I promise you this is an actual quote from the song, "Roll up to the spot, burrito." Bro, if they don't pack their Chipotle-looking selves up and just stop with this nonsense, I don't get it. I don't understand. How is that allowed to pass for the final product? And in comparison to Season 1, I really wish that the boardroom scenes felt a bit more impactful, because here in Season 2, it just seems that there are less exciting candidates to basically choose from for these contestants. At times, I felt that they weren't struggling just to build drama and suspense, that they were struggling to bring in contestants because none of them were compatible and none of them were good choices. There are some, of course, in the beginning of the boardroom moments that make sense, like, you know, Jessica and Dom, but otherwise, what are we doing? These contestants just are here to wreak havoc for 2 nights, maybe a night, and that's it. Now, to the credit of this season, I will say episodes begin to flow really well from episode 4 onward. Episode 4 to me is the best episode this week, and its pacing is really good. It just takes a little while for season 2 to get going, so again, if you're not a huge fan of Perfect Match, you're probably not going to love what you're seeing, but it does take a little while. They try to maybe sort of smooth you over by giving you a lot of overly sexualized moments that I didn't love, but for the most part, episode 4 is when you start to see the game is flowing. The game is actually beginning to take root, and there are now good teams and bad teams. Bad not because they're not good at the game, just that they're kind of villainous. So I'd only recommend watching Season 2 of Perfect Match if you're looking for something to pass the time and are a fan of these trashy Netflix reality TV shows. But if you're looking for a reality show with stakes as high as Love is Blind, you're going to be disappointed. So yeah, alrighty y'all, well that's about all I can say in the spoiler-free discussion, because now it's time for a spoiler warning. Do not go past this point if you haven't watched week 1. Go ahead, subscribe to the channel, save this to your watch later list, and come back and let me know in the comments exactly how you guys feel about this season so far. Alrighty y'all, so it's time. Spoiler recap is in full effect. It was about to get messy. So the first wave of contestants arrived to the house and were introed this season with Nick Lachey explaining the house and the rules, but he's walking around with this robe, and I have to wonder if he walked around with this robe everywhere on day 1 of production. But he looks comfy, and he's actually not doing a bad job of hosting. I mean, it's better than Love is Blind, so eventually we get our first batch, right? And that includes contestants like Stevan. And Stevan is an interesting character because this man said, "People call me Water Gun Kelly." And from that point on, I immediately knew this man was going to be out of pocket. And oh boy, did he get there really quickly. Then we have Brighton, who's talking in the third person, and immediately I thought, child, please, what are we doing with this contestant? He's here not to play the game seriously, but he's here, of course, for himself. And to some degree, every candidate on these shows are, but this man was on Squid Game The Challenge, I think, and he came into this house thinking, I'm going to be the alpha male, and boy, does he get humble very quickly. And after that, we see Micah. Micah from Love is Blind. You guys remember Micah from Love is Blind? How could you forget? We talked about her season in depth here on the channel. But I'm going to be honest. From the moment she walked in the house to our first testimonial interview with her, I already knew. She does not sound serious about this competition. Like, she's not in it. She's not. And then who else walks through the door? None other than Izzy from Love is Blind. Hopefully with a better credit score. I believe it was him and Micah that were last seen on the Love is Blind Season 6 reunion, and people were wondering, oh my gosh, dating rumors. Oh, this first episode, actually these first 2 episodes prove ain't no dating rumors. Ain't no dating. And then the heavy hitters come in like Harry from Too Hot to Handle. He's here, and if you need a little recap of this character, well, he's a very promiscuous individual. His ex-girlfriends were on Season 1 of Perfect Match, and one of them ended up winning with Dom. Remember Georgia? I was even like, oh my gosh, they seem so sweet together. Not the case, because Georgia ended up cheating on Dom with Harry. And Harry's in the show, and Dom will eventually be there, so, oh boy. So Netflix said we're not wasting any time, and we're getting right into our first compatibility challenge for Season 2 of Perfect Match. And it was just your typical, hey, who can one-up one another, because you have the faces of the contestants currently on one of the die, and on the other die you have the activity that they should perform. So they roll the die, and oh my gosh, it is just so unnecessary. Everyone is just trying way too hard during this game. There's unnecessary sensual elements, a lot of immaturities on display already in the house at this point, so if Izzy is the most mature one so far, you got problems. And then during this challenge, which no one really won, so I don't know why they even would label it as such, but Stevan talks about his love of toes, and I believe I'm not even going to say it, but okay, whatever, he sucks on Xanthi's toes. It's so gross. So gross. Like, why? I believe it was Xanthi, right? And then eventually Harry mentions during this moment that he wants to walk away in love. Hilarious. Harry wants to walk away in love on a show like this. Man, when do these men learn, right? Oh my gosh. Alrighty, so after that first compatibility challenge, because I guess they never really gave a winner, we end up having a sort of mixer, get to know each other moment with these contestants, and then we get introduced fully to Tolu. Tolu says, I'm not one to dive right in on the first meeting when she's meeting men and whatnot, but then follows up that quote with, I'm excited to figure out who I'm going to be taking to bed tonight. Girl, what are you even talking about? See, that's what's the perfect match. They say one thing and then they do another thing. Always. But at least Tolu was able to just be honest about it. So far, though, in this week of Perfect Match, Tolu is probably the most personable and genuine contestant. Yeah, I would say so. So of course Tolu and Harry have a conversation, and Harry thought Tolu's earrings were of Antarctica when they're of Africa. You are out of your ever-loving mind, Harry. I don't care where in the world you're from. Since when does the continent of Africa look like Antarctica? And as we continue to learn about these contestants, we learn that Xanthi is Greek. And this is probably the first time a Greek contestant has been on Perfect Match, or even Love is Blind if I'm not mistaken. And me being half Greek and half Italian, I immediately understood her name, like pronouncing it properly. Didn't really need phonetic, Xanthi Joanna, and I'm like, oh, okay. But all the other contestants were trying to say her name and they could not get it. There's even a moment where she said Kalenita, and I'm like, oh yeah, you know, I know exactly what that means. So it kind of felt cool, right? It was neat. Now I hope they have an Italian speaking contestant whenever they bring in more contestants as the season goes on too. And then we learn more about Dominique, who apparently already has her eyes set on Brighton, and she's coming on really strong about that. And she already starts talking about walking out of here with Brighton, and I'm thinking, girl, what are we doing? Like, it is literally day one, not even night one, day one, and you're talking about walking out of here with somebody already. I'm just going to be honest right now. Brighton was not thinking that either. But then they match right away, and I'm starting to think, alrighty, is Brighton is not here for love, clearly. But Dominique seems like she's letting herself get into a very bad situation. They don't already click off the bat. And then we see Elys, who's drawn to Harry, both of them being British, of course. Harry mentions that he's changed as a man. He says he's been to therapy, he's read self-help books, and he's worked on himself. This is what Harry says, right? And he's doing everything except for going to church because the man needs Jesus. Still, he makes the same dumb decisions. And he always is, in these testimonial interviews, saying the nastiest things. I'm not even going to repeat one of the things he says, but it involves a pie, and I don't think it's nasty. It's not appropriate, and it's not becoming of someone who could one day be a husband, because he's always talking about he wants a date to marry this season. I want a date to marry. But are you ready? You know? Are you ready? So everyone's starting to pair up, and then Izzy's like, listen, I need to pair up with somebody. Let me go to my number one choice, Micah. And it's weird because he's already fawning over her in the worst way. Actually, not fawning, he's fanboying over Micah. Like, he knows her season in and out, he knows her life, probably follows her on IG. I wouldn't be surprised if he's probably reposted something of Micah's on his own story, but the man needs to leave the house. At this point, I'm just over Izzy. I'm like, okay, no, stop it. Izzy does not seem like a bad individual. It just seems like he purposefully puts himself in these dumb situations, setting himself up for disaster. So Micah even mentions in her testimonial interview that Izzy isn't for her. So at this point, you already know Izzy's on his way out. And then we got Kaz, who is just this Energizer bunny in more ways than one, and he ends up turning down Micah when she asks if he wants to match. And this is going to be interesting as we get on with this recap, because Homeboy says no to Micah, but eventually will probably turn his head the other way. But Kaz says something that really annoyed me, and it's probably the sentiment of a lot of these men in this house. He says, well, if I don't match with anyone else, I'm going to go around the house now and talk to other women, but if I don't match with them, I'll come back to you. Last resort, Micah. And that, oh boy, that's bad. And then we go back to Tolu, and Tolu is actually feeling the one contestant I never thought she would, which is Izzy. So they're digging each other, and then you have Xanthi and Kaz getting on well, which felt out of left field also. And lastly, Micah and Stevan, they have this very weird conversation about toxicities in relationships and how Stevan actually likes it. You know, I don't have a red flag on set, but if I did, it would be raised far and wide for Stevan. That man's a walking red flag. So after their first get to know each other session, we gotta start matching. So our very first match, of course, is Brighton and Dominique. And you would think because they matched first, oh my gosh, it would be so lovely. No, absolutely not. They have a huge argument night one together about real workouts and why Dominique feels yoga is a real workout, which it is, and why Brighton feels it's not, and he's wrong. So they just already aren't working out. They're just so bad for each other. Okay, moving on. The next match is Harry and Elys. You have Tolu and Izzy, Xanthi and Kaz, and then Micah and Stevan. I'm gonna be honest with you. The whole Micah-Stevan match felt so forced. So forced. So now that we have our first matches, it's time for the official Compatibility challenge, and this involves cages that are hung above the water. Now they're on a rappel line where contestants have to then move back and forth in sync to get the cage to the finish line. Now visually you can already probably imagine this, right? So I have a question. Did a teenager write and come up with this challenge? It is just so ridiculous. We know what they're getting at here. And during the challenge, Kaz is just so full of himself, talking about how he's made for this. This is his game. Oh yeah, I've slept with all these women. I got experience. Bro, get over yourself. Come on. And then Dominique casually throws out with Brighton, hey, force equals mass times acceleration. I'm like, where did this come from, Dominique? And then in her testimonial interview, she says she's an engineering graduate. Why are you on this show, Dominique? Like, part of me is like, you're better than this. And the other part is like, you willingly went on this show. So are you? Why? So eventually, all of the contestants are racing towards the finish line. And they, well, some of them get close. Some of the others just don't go anywhere. But eventually, Harry and Elys end up being the winners. Yay, right? We're so excited for them. Oh my gosh, it's so good. They're probably going to stay together. Absolutely. Hilarious. So Harry and Elys get a date and a trip to the boardroom, but first we'll talk about their date. It is incredibly short, and I'm not even going to try to add fluff to this. It's a short date, but Harry did mention here that he won't be hooking up during the show, so it's important to see if he will stay or stick true to that when he's matched up with somebody else down the line. We'll talk about that. So we transition to the boardroom with Harry and Elys. Nick Lachey goes through all the rules, and then we get some really funny edits. One is absolutely hilarious where Harry's trying to explain Dom and Dom's ex-girlfriend situation and how he's involved, and then there's this like subtitle that says translation, Harry slept with Dom's ex, and it was really, really funny because Harry is wrong for that. And then you have, of course, the new contestants being brought in. So we'll talk about the first one. Harry and Elys are bringing in Chris into the house. He was on Dated and Related to match with Dominique. And then you have Dom being brought in the house from the first season of Perfect Match to then match with Tolu. And I'm like, I could maybe see some of these working out. So Tolu and Dom go on a date together, and Tolu is ecstatic because, of course, she doesn't like Izzy. We could have all told you that, guys. So they're on a date. It seems like it's going well. We'll check in on them in a little bit. And then you have Chris and Dominique's date. Nothing really of note here, but they're on this like kayak thing, and it feels like, you know, eventually they get to a situation where they're sitting and having a conversation on the dock, and it looks so uncomfortable. Like my butt would probably be so sore sitting on this dock. For the most part, though, both of the dates seem like they went okay. But back at the house, it's time to check in on our matches after these dates and after the very first boardroom session. So Brighton and Dominique. Chris puts Dom right on the spot in the middle of her and Brighton's conversation. Chris is like, I'm not losing Dominique at all. And he then crashes the convo after Elys encouraged him. So it seems like Chris is very keen on being with Dominique, and Brighton is sitting back like, this man ain't anything. But then he sees Chris going and interrupting these conversations that Dominique's having with other men because Chris really wants Dominique. So then Brighton is like, okay, what do? I'm gonna go and gossip with Dom. So Dom eventually tells Brighton, listen, homie, nothing against you, but you and Dominique are not gonna work out. And I mean, look. And Chris is sticking up for Dominique in all these conversations, and you're here. But honestly, we all could have told Brighton that they're not going to work out. So we'll see if they end up matching after all. So let's check in now with Harry and Elys. There's a really weird moment here during this moment in week 1 where for some reason Harry continues to talk about foreskins with the rest of the house. Forgive me, Lord. What is this nonsense? What? Why? He then asks Chris about it, which is so weird. And then Harry continues to baffle me as an audience member because Harry then sees Dom walk in the house and says, "There's my boy." Please. Bro, he ain't your boy. I don't know any friends that do what you did to Dom. What? Then eventually Elys, we get some focus on her, tells Harry that, listen, you know, I'm not going to pull my guard down in these 3 days. So if you're looking for like someone fresh to sleep with, it's not going to be me. It's going to take time. And listen, Elys, I get that. However, you know the show you signed up for. So like, don't come on here thinking it's The Bachelor or The Bachelorette. You don't got that many months to work with. You got days. Alrighty, so let's transition now to Tolu and Izzy. Well, it seems like Izzy knows, okay, so Tolu, I went on a date with Dom, I gotta find somebody else. So Izzy goes back to Micah and says, let me try this again. So listen, I'm not a huge fanboy. I probably was awkward, right, in that conversation earlier. So what do you think about giving me another shot? Fresh slate. And Micah totally curves him. Just says, deuces, I ain't with that. So bye, Izzy. So yeah, you can already see where this is going for Izzy. And lastly, Micah and Stevan. Micah admits, of course, hey, there's no romantic spark here at all with Stevan. We could have told you that, Micah. Come on. So now our new matches during the very first mixer are Micah and Kaz, Xanthi and Stevan. So yes, Xanthi and Micah swapped their matches on purpose and even had a conversation about it. So weird. Dom and Tolu, Elys and Harry, and lastly, Dominique and Chris. I'm not gonna lie though, Dominique didn't seem thrilled about pairing up with Chris. I feel like Dominique was like, hey, I like the bad boy in Brighton, but I like the sort of stability and Prince Charming look of Chris. Maybe I'm just gonna go with Chris because Brighton's upsetting me, okay? Yoga is a real workout. So that means 2 contestants are sent home, and it is Brighton and Izzy. Now Brighton was talking this big game like, I'm gonna win this competition, and he's the first of the 2 contestants to be sent home. Womp womp. Alrighty, so now we're gonna transition to the next day in another compatibility challenge. That's right, the kissing challenge is back, but I would never have guessed it based on these platforms that Nick Lachey told them to look at. So during the challenge, the contestants are blindfolded and they have to kiss each other and rate it 1 through 10 afterwards. During the challenge though, Micah was going ham. I'm like, Micah, what are you got something to release here? Like, there's a lot of pressure off your shoulders, I guess? I don't know, but you were going in. And then Xanthi was probably the one candidate I respected the most during this challenge. She covered her mouth with every other guy and said, nope, I'm not kissing all these guys. They gotta work for that. And I'm like, you know what? I kind of like it. That's cool. So then we get to the results and everyone talks about their misfortunes or their fortunes. And Stevan admits that, hey, Micah might have chipped my tooth. So remember when I said she was going ham? Too ham. It was ridiculous. Awkward moments, of course, ensue because Chris, who's Dominique's match, gave her his lowest score. But Dominique's highest score was with Chris. Oh, it's so awkward. So eventually they tally up the results. We see who's who, and Kaz and Micah win the challenge. Interestingly enough. So Kaz and Micah go on a date and it's salsa dancing. Well, Kaz has got the rhythm. Salsa dancing is not in Micah's cards. She's got nothing on the dance floor. I'm so sorry to say that, Micah. But their convo eventually afterwards, after they learn how to dance salsa, it doesn't seem very like flowy. It's not going in a positive direction, it seems. So Kaz, I guess, is trying to hit a home run here and says, well, I guess I can see us going the distance, which is weird after this conversation because nothing seemed to be clicking. So then they get to the boardroom together and it's Jessica being brought in to date Harry and Alara being brought in to date Stevan. Yes, that's right, Jessica's back, y'all, and she's so dramatic sometimes without trying to be dramatic. It's so funny. But Jessica being brought in to date Harry, I'm like, Jessica, why? You seem like a good person, but Harry, why? But again, it's not her decision. So on Jessica and Harry's date, Harry is awestruck. Harry before this date was saying, I'm leading with my heart, Elys. I'm doing the right thing. But when he saw Jessica, no longer was he leading with his heart. I'm gonna just say that. Harry ends up trying to, I guess, win over Jessica as much as possible and gives her this fake leaf that he was walking around and chewing on. If I'm Jessica, I'm like, thanks, and just like toss it. But Harry eventually admits to Jessica, hey, alright, listen, I'm really enamored by you, and my relationship with Elys is more like a friendship. Ouch. And then on Alara and Stevan's date, they go ATV off-roading, right? It's so cool. And eventually they have this, I guess, meal by this waterfall, and it seems like it went well, and they have chemistry together. So good for them, right? Alrighty. So let's now get back to the house and check in on our matches. We got Dom and Tolu, and eventually Dom says what we all knew, guys. Dom sits Tolu down and says, Tolu, listen, I know, you sent Izzy home basically, and you stayed with me, but I want to go and explore other options. Poor Tolu. And then with Harry and Elys, this is interesting because once Jessica walks in the house, Elys is like, what the heck, Micah? You're bringing in Jessica, who is Harry's type to a T? So then Elys and Harry have a conversation. They have to, right? This is where Elys gets really upset at Harry for saying, what, we're just friends? That's what I gotta hear that from the other women? What the heck, bro? And I do take issue with Harry here because he keeps saying he's dating to marry when he literally fell head over heels for Jessica and her looks and not for her heart. So eventually Harry and Elys have this conversation again, and Harry just breaks it off with Elys, but he's acting like a child. He says stupid things like, if it's real, let it go and it'll come back, or something like, if the love is real, let it go and it'll come back like a boomerang. And Elys says, I'm not in love with you, Harry. And then Harry's like, oh, great, that settles it. Okay, bye. What a jerk. And lastly, Dominique and Chris. Well, again, I don't think they're a very good match. They have zero chemistry. And trust me, it ends up showing. So it's time to talk about these new matches during the mixer after the second round of compatibility challenges and boardroom moments. Kaz and Micah end up matching together, so maybe they will go a little bit further. I don't know, I didn't think that salsa dancing date went great for them. And then you have Jessica and Harry, of course, but Jessica says, we'll match, Harry, but if you play with me, I'm gonna cut you. So at least she's setting the standard there. Then we have Chris and Elys, and to me, this was just a sympathy match because Elys knew I'm not going to be with Harry, but I can maybe win over Chris and fool him to keep me in the house so I can get back at Micah and get back at Harry. Let it go, Elys, let it go. And then we have Alara and Stevan, and it's very interesting that they matched because Stevan and Alara made out together after Alara had a conversation with Dom telling him that if she had the power, she'd choose him. So it's weird because Alara's like, I love Dom, and then it's like, well, with Stevan, he's kind of a bad boy. So I'm like, what's really going on here? So Dom gets blindsided completely, and Stevan ends up cooking and preparing a date for Alara after they, I guess don't do so well with these compatibility challenges. So Stevan's putting in the work, right? But Alara in her testimonial interview says she still wants to explore things with Dom. So Alara is all over the place. Stevan wants Alara, Dom wants Alara. Alara's like, I got choices, but be more clear. What do you want? But clearly she shows what she wants when she matches with Stevan. So they're an interesting duo. And lastly, Dom is like, well, okay, Tolu, remember we had that conversation about me exploring? Do you just want to stay in the house at least one more night? And Tolu's like, fine, whatever. So they end up matching. It's terrible. So that means 2 women are sent home, and it's Xanthi and Dominique. Galinita Xanthi, you're sent home. And then the camera does this montage of everyone putting the do not disturb sign on their doors, and we see Jessica and Harry making out together in bed, and I'm starting to think, did they do what I think they might have done? So then we transition to the compatibility challenge. It's the next one in the long line of dumb compatibility challenges, but this one I think is the best one. It's the truth bomb game. So we get to learn more about these contestants where they have to basically tell the truth about certain situations. They anonymously are basically Nick Lachey says, okay, who jumped into a river full of crocodiles? And then everyone guesses who it is, and then you find out who it really was. So it got really interesting. We find out that Jessica was engaged to somebody solely because they were rich. And then she says in her testimonial interview, well, why wouldn't I marry someone who isn't wealthy? You know, Jessica, that's a good question. Maybe the answer is because that one quality being the reason why you want to marry somebody hasn't worked out for you so far. Might want to explore other things, you know, like things that bear fruit. And then we learn that Stevan has a cage in his house for a dog, but he uses it for women that he brings over to his house. This man is odd. I'm sorry. Is given creepo, like weird Netflix stalker documentary vibes. I don't know. I don't like that at all. That's really weird. Eventually though, they tally up all the totals and Dom and Tolu win, which is very interesting because at this point Tolu's like, oh, we won, we'll go on another date. Maybe we are going to be together, Dom. Well, I'd love to tell you that was the case, you guys, but on their date they're making food and Dom is trying really hard to tell Tolu, I ain't interested in you, girl, and I want to explore other options. I feel bad for Tolu because again, she's been played. But once we look at the contestants on the board, we look and it's all guys. So clearly Dom is like, hold on, Tolu, why don't you date any of these guys? And then I'm free to go, right? Wrong. Tolu's like, I'm blocking that opportunity for you, homie. But it is weird to see Trevor on the board from Love is Blind season 6. Like, we're really going to bring in Trevor after that nonsense? I wonder if this was before or after we found out what he did by playing the system and then already being in a relationship going on the show. So... But Tolu is being petty this entire time with Dom and tells him, man, Alara and Stevan shouldn't be broken up. Dom is clearly annoyed and yeah, he made the wrong one upset. But Tolu read him like a book because she said, Dom, if you wanted to rewrite your narrative here, your dating narrative, why are you on Perfect Match Season 2 doing the same thing you did from Season 1? So eventually, Justin is brought in to date Elys and Tolu put herself on a date with Jake. Good job, Tolu. Even though Jake? Really? From the ultimatum? Ugh. So let's start with Justin and Elys's date. They have an ice bath date that Elys didn't participate in, but how in the world is this a date idea? This sounds awful. You go on a date to be relaxed, to love one another, to explore your life together, and an ice bath is the idea? That's ridiculous. But you know, honestly, we learn very quickly here that Elys is just looking to spite Harry with a new guy in the house, so she's trying to force herself and will herself into this date with Justin. And then we have Tolu and Jake, and on their date, well, we just remember why Jake was so ridiculously messy on the ultimatum. They go on a gym date where all the gym materials are made of wood or something like that. I don't know. Who's thinking of these dates? Can we please be more creative here, okay? The food making, the cooking class, that was cool. The salsa dancing, great. But a gym date? Come on, bro, really? How are they supposed to learn about each other on a gym date? But the one thing we do learn is that Jake is not set on Tolu. Poor Tolu going through the ringer here. So of course we do get some new matches during the mixer moment. Alrighty, before that, they gotta build up hype and, you know, tension before they reveal who got matched. They do a truth or dare game together, the contestants in the house, and Elys was dared to kiss the person she fancies the most in the house, and then she kisses Alara. And I'm like, were you not just on a date with Justin? What the heck is this? I thought you wanted to spite Harry. Weird. And then Tolu is dared by Chris to kiss him, and Tolu and Chris make out, and then we start to notice, hold on, is there something there between them two? But moving on, Micah is walking around the house and she's trying to find someone new to match up with. She starts talking to Justin, and now Elys is thinking, what the heck, Micah? You're talking to the person that I went on a date with? What is going on? So let me talk to Kaz. But clearly that goes nowhere fast. So Micah is getting a bit of the villain edit here, when I think it's just Elys trying way too hard to spite Harry, and it's not working. Kaz then tells Elys that his feelings are still for Micah, and this is the same Kaz who later on will come to know that maybe his feelings aren't so strong for Micah. Yeah, we'll get there, I promise. Dom is getting super frustrated. He's like, oh my gosh, why? I want to be with Alara so bad, and Tolu is doing this thing and making my life difficult. Eventually, in a conversation with, it's Harry, Stevan, and Jessica's present, which is Harry's match currently, Dom is so mad that he shows his true colors and how he really feels about Harry and says, and I quote, everyone is so genuine. So Harry, why did you come here? It's hilarious. It's dramatic. I'm here for it, but boy, I mean, that's pretty harsh. So Jessica now was questioning Harry's intentions, like, bro, if your buddy is saying this about you, why are you on this show? Huh, very interesting. I'm sure that will not make Harry very happy. So we got Harry crying, Jessica crying. Harry says, I gotta go. So we know where this is going. Well, he's gonna stay on the show. Come on, guys. We've watched enough reality TV to know he's not leaving. So our new matches now during the mixer are Micah and Kaz, Alara and Stevan, which I'm sure Dom is not happy about, Tolu and Chris. Oh boy. So what happens now? Elys and Justin, which means, yes, Dom, your perfect match season 2 was short-lived. You're gone. And so is Jake. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Jake and Dom, I'm glad they were kind of sent home. It just wasn't working. And also, Dom, you want to rewrite your narrative so bad, but like Tolu said, why are you on perfect match? It just feels like Dom is sort of putting himself in these situations now willingly. So at one point I felt bad. Now I'm like, buddy, you're doing it to yourself. So at this point, we're in the final stretch with week 1's episodes. We have 11 days left until they have to choose their perfect match. So checking in now with our current matches. Apparently, Harry and Jessica did match because it is the next day and they're still on the show together. They just didn't officially confirm they matched, which is maybe an editing oversight. But yeah, Jessica said, Harry, you're just worth it. Harry's worth working out the kinks with. So I guess they're going to do it together. They're going to just work through it, which is really interesting. So, of course, after that, it's a new day. You know what that means. Another compatibility challenge, you guys. And this one sucks. I'm sorry. Lord forgive me. This compatibility challenge is awful, okay? They have to pick up balls in the ocean and walk them to a basket using all of their bodies and drop them off and score the highest amount of points within a given period of time. Alara and Stevan win. I'm not even going to recap that compatibility challenge. It stinks. So Alara and Stevan go on a date, and I'm not going to lie to you guys, they actually do seem like the strongest couple so far in terms of strategy. Like, they're playing the game, y'all, and they're doing well. So then they get into the boardroom together, and yeah, this is where it seems like they're running out of contestants to bring into the house. It just doesn't feel like any of these new contestants can really shake things up. At least that's what I thought until Holly was brought in to date Kaz, and then Melinda was brought in to date Chris. Alrighty, so both of these contestants are clearly trying to steal someone's man. Melinda especially is coming into this house, and she doesn't care if she's with Chris or whoever. Everyone is fair game for Melinda. Melinda was the host of Chris's reality television show, and Melinda came on really strong to Chris, and it just felt really weird, like you're doing too much, right? So Chris is interested, but just because of her physical looks. We'll see if that sticks, right? Then moving on to Kaz and Holly's date, where they get into this clay bath, and it's like a skin exfoliant and they're getting clean, but really it's just an excuse for Kaz and Holly to feel up on one another, and it is overly sexualized, and it is kind of gross. I ain't gonna lie to y'all, because all the while you'd have to imagine Micah doesn't know this is happening, and Kaz at this point seems like he's already moved on from Micah, because he's thinking with not his head, he's thinking with his head. So now it's time for the next mixer, and it seems like Micah is self-sabotaging her and Kaz's relationship. Even before they have a conversation, she's already like, Kaz has moved on, I'm done, this is awful, I put on a nice dress, and Holly comes in wearing a similarly nice dress, and I'm upset. So Micah's doing that thing that she did in Love is Blind, which is self-sabotaging her own relationship. So we begin to get these new matches together, and surprisingly, it's Chris and Tolu first up, and Chris says, I adore you, Tolu, and I guess Chris didn't like Melinda's over-the-top nature. And then we have Justin and Elys matching together, Stevan and Alara, of course, but it's weird that Stevan said he feels like they're married. Slow your roll, homie. Come on, don't do that now. And then we have Harry and Jessica, but we're still waiting on Micah and Kaz, right? And then there's Melinda in the mix, and Holly's still floating around. So what's going to happen? I guess only next week will tell us, because I don't know, y'all. I'm curious. I mean, who gets sent home? Who stays? I don't know, but I'm pumped to find out, actually. So if you enjoyed this recap and review and you can't wait for week 2 just like me, hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, because we're talking all about week 2 next Friday as well. And let me know in the comments below which matches surprised you the most and which ones upset you, because there are some here that I'm like, what the heck, and some that I'm like, oh, it makes sense. But y'all, again, thanks so much for sticking with me. Thanks for tuning in. God bless you guys. And I'll catch you at the next screening. Woo, boy, I gotta just like... I'm just gonna go and watch like a very nice, non-toxic show.